He came back and shot. He shot him. When he came back, he shot, and he fell, stumbling, past the shadow wood, down, shot, dying, dead, to full halt. At the bottom, bleeding, shot dead. He died then. There, after the fall, the speeding bullet tore his face, and blood sprayed fine over the killer and the gray light. Pictures of the dead man are everywhere, and his spirit sucks up the light. But he died in darkness darker than his soul, and everything tumbled blindly with him, dying down the stairs. We have no word on the killer, except he came back from somewhere to do what he did, and shot only once into his victim's stare, and left him quickly when the blood ran out. We know the killer was skillful, quick, and silent, and that the victim probably knew him. Other than that, aside from the caked sourness of the dead man's expression and the cool surprise in the fixture of his hands and fingers, we know nothing. All right. Max, you're up first, followed by Ian. Any thought at all on this?
Yeah, well, I had a great discussion on this in my office hours yesterday with Celia, Barbara, Vidaya, Larry. We talked a bit about how it seems a little out of step at times with some of the more canonical beat poems, for example. And we talked a bit about how it seems very whereas howl is really this, as the name suggests, this sort of burst, this expression of emotion, sometimes of frustration, of anger. The emotion is very contained here in Instant. That Baraka seems like he's trying to actually kind of hold things together in a way to sort of like rather than simply have this sort of Ginsbergian outburst. There's a bit more craft. There's a bit more care. There's a bit more tension, internal tension in the poem. And it seems a little bit to be what makes it seem kind of atypical for this week.
Mm. Thank you, Max. A great start. Let's turn to Ian with Christy on deck. Ian, what do you think?
So, weirdly, one of the things that this poem reminded me of was The Listeners by Walter de la Mare. There's this kind of mystery in the poem that I feel like is hinted at, with the he came back. I like the way that the poem seems to be all this action and moment, but it also kind of in this sort of way sort of has a sort of peripheral vision in it that we don't really get to see. But like so many, all poems are kind of capturing action after it happens in a way. And I feel like this poem is sort of doing that with something that could be really disturbing, but also it can't help but exist within narrative framing.
Wonderful. Wow, this is really happening. Christy, followed by Graham.
Yeah, I love there's just a couple of lines that have this really intense lyricism. I love the blood sprayed fine, and it's fine. It's fine because it's like it's a fine mist.
Yeah.
But if you say something is fine, then you're usually praising it. And is he praising the blood? He's not praising the blood shed. That's for sure.
Right. Right.
And then that juxtaposition with the grey light is just painfully beautiful, and then the conclusion of the poem is again really hits hard. I think the cool surprise and the fixture of his hands and fingers. We know nothing.
Mm.
And it's about what can we know, what do we know.
Fantastic. Okay, Graham, can you follow that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I really like about this. One thing I really like about it is how, particularly in the first half of the poem, so much of the language in the description of the violence actually sounds violent. He shot, he fell, down, shot, dying, dead, full halt. Right? It's really, he's hitting you in the face with every word.
Mm.
It actually reminds me of Lowell's Memories of West Street and Lepke. There's a line in it, they beat him black and blue. Right? And it's that same staccato attack. But then, like Christy, what I really love is just the ending, that last line. We know nothing. right? So we've had all this really this rich description, caked sourness, cool surprise, skillful, quick, and silent, and then at the end, we know nothing. It's like he's set up this statement, and then at the very end, he turns the whole thing into a question mark.
Brilliant. We're doing it. Leanne, what are you thinking?
Well, actually, I have never seen this Baraka poem before. It's amazing. Thank you for introducing me to it. It to me, it seemed like a long-lined ballad. It's a documentary story, but it's very different than a ballad because it has this headlong rush, but it's also, like you said, crafted. But the part that really sticks out to me is that part about the pictures. What is this? That's going away. Flash, flash, flash. It's like pictures of the dead man are everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like I see these headlines and this documentary, and like how the ballad is like a documentary of what happens and a warning and a leaping and lingering from a picture to a picture, and there's something lost in between.
Love that. Chris Tids, do you like this poem? Can we get Chris the mic?
I do, and I just add a couple more things if I could.
Please.
One thought is, who are we really concentrating on this poem? Are we concentrating on the person who has been murdered, or are we concentrating predominantly on the killer? And I'd say it's the killer. He. And the other thing I would say is, and I think you touched on this, I think there's a hint of cubism here, that's like the cubist rather, because we've got flashes, and it's da-da-da-da-da. He came back, da-da-da-da. He came back, and sort of confusion that you could actually have yourself if you were asked to relate what on earth had happened in this shocking incident that just, and remember he came back. So I think there's two elements there that I'd just like to draw attention to. You know?
So glad you did. I think you're right about the cubism. I think the beginning of this poem is Steinian. And I think you're wrong, and I don't really ever say that in ModPo. I can't believe it. I actually said that I think Chris Tids is wrong. The guy is a volunteer community TA. He works his butt off in ModPo. He comes all the way here, and I'm telling him he's wrong.
You could rephrase that.
Okay. Chris, I have another point of view to add to yours, which is very cubistic, so fine. I think we have to be interested in both he shot him, the him who got shot, the he who did the shooting, the subject, the object. It all tumbles down the stairs and gets mixed up so that we do not know who pulled the trigger and who got shot. We have no idea, and that is the way violence often is. We like, if we're the police or the journalist, those are the two forms of official rhetoric that we get referred to in the poem. If we're like the police or the journalists, we tend to want to figure that out. But how many of you have heard the police sergeant come to the microphone after a heinous murder and say, we have no information, we know nothing, we're still working on it? And I think Baraka is saying that is the way violence really is in a Steinian sense of real.